Hi, my name is Michael Gilmore and I'm the writer of Whizbang's blog and one of the co-founders of ParkLogic.com. In this video, we'll be taking a look at week 8 of the impact of COVID-19 on the PPC industry or pay-per-click industry, which many domain investors derive their income from. For the previous 7 weeks, we've been seeing there's been an up and a down and so forth like that, but this week we'll be taking a look at what's occurred in the last 7 days. In particular, what I've been trying to do is separate out direct advertisers from Google-based advertisers to see how they're going and see how they're different from one another and the impact this will have. And we've been seeing there's been quite a roller coaster these past 8 weeks. But anyway, without further ado, let me swap to the screen and take a look at COVID-19. All right then. So COVID-19 week 8. What's going on? So the normalized RPM and RPM trends, both the RPM and normalized RPM are again swinging upwards. So don't forget the differences between a normalized RPM and RPM. And RPM is what the monetization companies may report because everyone counts traffic differently. That'll vary from each company to another. Well, the normalized RPM is what we count going through our servers. So you can see there the normalized RPM has been on a bit of a roller coaster. It seems to have leveled out this last week, which is always good news. And the RPM, though, has been increasing across this past week. In fact, I've highlighted that last week just in blue, just to give you a clearer picture of what's actually going on. So that's normalized RPM and RPM. So what's going on with the earnings per click and click-through rates? Well, I remember last week I talked about the fact that it looked like the earnings per click was sort of going down, trending down. Well, it's completely swung back the other way. It's amazing what 7 days will do. And well, the click-through rate's about the same. The earnings per click, which is the red line, is swinging back up again, which is great news. If you can maintain a click-through rate and the earnings per click is going up, it means more advertisers are coming into the market. And with more advertisers coming into the market, there's more demand for the traffic, which is always a good thing for those with the traffic. Okay, so what's happening with the volatility? Basically, remember, anything below the 100% line means there's a contraction. Anything above the 100% line means expansion, or there's more demand for the traffic versus less demand for the traffic. Yeah, so we saw there's a big swings across a couple of weeks ago. It was bouncing all over the place. And well, basically right now, this past week, it's really stabilized. It's almost on the 100% line, which means there's neither contraction or expansion. There's this one data point heading upwards into the green area. I'm not sure whether that will continue on or not. We'll see in the coming week. But remember, we're comparing a Monday versus the previous Monday or Tuesday versus the previous Tuesday, and to get a clearer picture of that and seeing that differential between the two. So you can't have an expansion forever, as we saw earlier on in March. But mid-March, there's a great big spike up expansion, but there has to be a contraction back because you can't have it continually going up forever. So any data point above the line is an expansion. Okay, so let's take a look at the revenue split with Google versus direct advertisers. And you can see there's been that slight rise towards the end of this past week. I think that's just a normal part of the trend. It's like a weekly trend going up and down. We're not seeing anything dramatic at this stage. The thing that surprises me by this is that the direct advertisers, part of our industry, a large portion of that revenue has come from the travel side or the travel segment. And you'd expect it to be like almost a step function down, but we didn't see that, which means I would say that a lot of the direct advertising partners have been racing around talking to the industries which have been seen a step up to fill in that gap where the travel industry is sort of degraded. But so direct advertising definitely taking more of the advertising pie in this past week, but still probably part of the short-term cycle. So let's take a look at Google versus direct advertisers, the normalized RPM. Remember, Google's in blue and the normalized RPM for the direct advertisers in red. Now, it's been all over the place this last couple of weeks, and you can see that. Suddenly there's a great amount of volatility in those areas, and you can see that in this area just here. There's been a huge amount of volatility. They're both beginning to trend up again after taking a bit of a dive down, which is interesting. But to get a clearer picture of this, I thought rather than taking a look since the beginning of the year, to zoom in and sort of say, okay, what's it been like the last few weeks? And you can see there definitely was a trend down and then a swing upwards. I think that last data point for the direct advertisers could be more of a perturbation in timing of the data. And that's why it sort of dropped down a bit. But it'll be interesting to see what actually occurs in the coming week, whether we can get that swing around happening once again. And that's what we're all looking for. So I thought I'd just also, I've had a lot of feedback from users sort of saying, wow, the Google and the direct advertisers really tussling it out. Take a look at this. Is the exactly same chart as the one I had 2 charts ago with Google versus direct advertisers, but they're using the same axes. So you can see there. And this really puts things into perspective. The normalized RPM for Google and the normalized RPM for direct advertisers on the same axis versus before I had a left axis and a right axis. And you can see Google in blue is much less than the direct advertisers, and like incredibly less. Although you can see that about mid-April, there was definitely a step up with Google. Google definitely took that step up. So you may say, well, wouldn't the advertisers get more of the traffic? No, the direct advertisers are great at certain market verticals. And that's why they really pay a lot with those. But Google, on the other hand, has a great breadth of advertising, huge breadth of advertising, and that's why Google's great. So you need the combination of both of those. Now, if you're sending all your traffic, say, to a single parking company or something like that, you're missing out on the red line, and which is not necessarily that good. So that's why we have an increasing number of clients coming across to ParkLogic, why we give them access to the red line and also the blue line, which is always a good thing for the clients. But let's just go back a couple of slides. Here we go. That was the same numbers, exactly the same numbers, but that's the left and right axes, where Google's on the left-hand axis. And if we take a look again, and now they're both using left-hand axes. And it's quite a dramatic change. It's a very dramatic change. So if we take a look at the volatility of Google versus direct advertisers, and you can see there that Google really dropped below into the contraction phase a couple of weeks ago, and it's began to pull back again. And if you look at the direct advertisers, they go in a cycle. You can see the cycle just there. It's been, but every probably 14 days, there's been a distinct cycle in direct advertisers. And so I think it'll go down for a couple of data points, and then it'll come back again, and it'll go down, come back in. And I think it's probably the cycle of budgets being expended. And on the other hand, if you look at Google, because they have much more advertisers, that cycle is not as dominant. It's spread out and smoothed out a lot more. But it'll be interesting to see what happens, whether Google will go into an expansion phase or not in terms of volatility. But anyway, yeah, so it's an interesting situation. And I think that there's one thing for certain, and that is that we live in interesting times. COVID-19 has really transformed, I think, the way people do business, with going online and trying to interact online and conduct some sort of commerce in that way. And that's been a really good thing, actually, for the PPC industry. What I don't know is going to happen still is that as time goes on and we see economies beginning to open up, like I know on May the 11th, the Victorian economy here in Australia, they're releasing some of the restrictions on social distancing and so forth like that. So I think that when that begins to happen, we may get less traffic online, but I think that businesses are now becoming used to actually do commerce online. And for a lot of those small to medium-sized businesses who never realized or took advantage of the internet and what it can do, they now realize that, hey, you know what? But bricks and mortar combined with the internet is actually a good combination. Or some of them may even abandon bricks and mortar altogether because they're sick of paying high rents and so forth like that. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the coming weeks, particularly as the large corporates come back into the space. Because at the moment, it's very clear that the small to medium businesses have soaked up a lot of the traffic and kept their earnings per click rates up and the RPM rates up. But what's going to happen when you get the competition of the large corporates coming back into the space? Are they suddenly going to like put more increased demand on there's a little bit less traffic as people go back into their offices and so forth? I don't know, but that's what makes this so exciting. I must admit, I really enjoyed doing this series on COVID-19. And it's week 8. I debate about doing like every 2 weeks or something like that. But I think that's probably still a good idea to keep it going. I'd love some feedback from you on that, whether you find this has been interesting or not, and whether it's helped you and your business. A comment or anything like that would be fantastic. But anyway, thanks very much for your time. Bye. I hope you enjoyed that video and you find them really valuable for your business and helping you make better decisions. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or pass the video on to your friends. Anyway, thanks a lot for that. Have a great day. Bye.